Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Welcome to another MIDF conversation, where we host a lunchtime conversation between MIDF and captains of industry and thought leaders. This is a keto lunch for the intellect. No carbs, no starch, just the good stuff. Pure protein and some greens as food for thought. I would like to welcome all our participants, the entrepreneurs, CEOs, fund managers, and finance and business professionals, the individual investors investing their own hard-earned money, members of the media, students, especially those studying macroeconomics, colleagues, and everyone. I'm delighted that we have with us today, one, Liza Mustapha, an executive director and the chief financial officer of PETRONAS. Liza? Welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Hello, Dato'. Thank you for inviting me for today's session. I'm really very honored to be part of today's lunchtime talk. Low carbs and all protein.
That's right. Great video as well. Your introduction video. I love this new idea of this new portrayal of PETRONAS, but passionate about progress. It's great. Great tagline. So probably before we get into that kind of like the meat, so to speak, maybe just a little bit about yourself. I mean, you were talking earlier. You studied at Asunta PJ. You went to the LSE, and then you joined PETRONAS. And you joined PETRONAS in the finance department, and now you've got the biggest CFO job in the country. How does it work? How do you get there?
Well, PETRONAS is my first and only employer. I've been in PETRONAS for 26 years, always in finance. I've also had some stints in procurement within the PETRONAS realm as well. The good thing is PETRONAS is a large organization, Dato'. So, I've moved across businesses within PETRONAS, although in the same functional role. I've been in the upstream side, midstream. Midstream was when I was in PETRONAS Gas. And I've also had some stints in corporate, which is the Treasury side, and later on the financial controller side as well. Short one in procurement as the chief procurement officer before I came onto the current role. So this is about my 2 years on seat.
Oh, amazing. Actually, I think we first met when you were head of procurement, which I thought was a gigantic job.
Part of our vendor financing program. I remember that. Yeah, I remember meeting you then.
And I thought it was a gigantic job. I mean, PETRONAS procurement runs in billions, and now you're the CFO. I mean, you make it sound so easy, but it can't have been to have started at the bottom. And you're the first homegrown CFO for a while, aren't you? I mean, I think the last few CFOs have come in from outside.
Yeah, well, but they were there for a long time too. I mean, Taufik was in PETRONAS as well. Okay, right. So in that sense, he was homegrown. Dato' George spent about 15 years in PETRONAS. So they've been, in PETRONAS per se for quite long as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But congratulations, and it's just great to have you there. So I want to talk a little bit first about, what's it like being the CFO of PETRONAS? I mean, I looked at your first quarter numbers, and I looked at revenue was 78,000. Then I realized you show these things in millions. So that's 78 billion ringgit in revenue in the first quarter of the year. Now, I mean that's a number I can't imagine, because I'm working it out. 1 bip or 1% of 1% of that is still 7.8 million ringgit. I mean, this is just a huge organization. How do you do it? How does one go around managing the money of something as gigantic as PETRONAS?
Well, just a year ago, that number was half, at 50 billion. And so between then and now, so if you're talking quarter to quarter, right? So between then and now, lots of things have happened. One is the oil price. It's so high. And of course, it's so coupled with efforts of being able to realize the high oil prices. Because if the oil prices are high, but we can't catch the sale, and we can't catch the sale because we can't produce, and we can't produce because the plants are not reliable, then that whole string of ecosystem has to be there. So really, it's the ability to kind of anchor on our what we call value chain. So that has helped. And having a value chain actually makes us more agile, because we can kind of plan properly, and the whole value chain is within our control, so to speak. That's that. And then there's also the high oil price. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The oil prices went up so much. It was also kind of half about a quarter ago, $60 per barrel, Q1 last year. And, it's more than $100 per barrel, Q1 this year. Okay? And internally, we feel that the oil prices are not very sustainable, and it can go up as quickly as it can come down. There are many factors that's affecting this very high oil price. And therefore, what we feel in PETRONAS is we need to stick to things that we can control, because oil price is not something you can control, but you can control your efficiency, you can control, working better, commercial excellence, operational excellence. Those are the things that we focus on. And Dato', after we came out of COVID, what became really apparent was this energy transition, and you saw that from our video, right? It has always been there. They need to make sure that we contain global warming to 1.5 degrees. Okay? And therefore, a lot of pledges were made, making sure that we're at net zero carbon emissions for PETRONAS is by 2050. But coming back to what's different, there was then a lot of focus on how are we going to ride energy transition, and how do we make sure that we are going to keep to our pledge of a net zero carbon emissions level by 2050. And so then it became, okay, you got to set aside funds which you didn't set aside before. So for normal operations, we would have to factor in decarbonization costs. Okay, and then we have to talk about having a material amount of our revenue coming not from traditional sources, traditional to PETRONAS, which is predominantly hydrocarbon-based, oil and gas. But then we talk about how can we make our portfolio more resilient and not be so susceptible to oil price changes, because oil prices, like I say, can go up and down, and we can't control, right? So then we say, probably we need to have a target whereby quite a sizable chunk of our revenue in the next 5-6 years is going to be coming from something which is not directly oil and gas. So we talked about specialty chemicals. So we got to go there in a material way, as opposed to commoditized chemicals, where we are predominantly at today.
Right.
We talked about how do we make inroads into the hydrogen space? How do we make inroads into renewables space? And for PETRONAS, predominantly it's wind and solar. And adjacent to that is also how can we also be involved in perhaps green mobility. So with all that, when you talk about the amount of revenue which then translates into cash, suddenly we say, oh, okay, but from a capital allocation perspective, we got to allocate it slightly differently going forward. The business as usual needs extra allocation even for the same level of production, because we have to cost in decarbonization, right? So that's that piece. And then we've also got to shape the portfolio by allocating capital so that we've got, I think it's probably 10% of our capital allocation into those non-traditional spaces, specialty chemicals, solar, and we're also on the lookout for other projects. Not that easy to come by, Dato', because I think when we take it to our board, there's such a disparate difference between the return you earn from oil and gas and the return you earn from solar, right? And there's always, okay, that's localized. What happens? Do you bring the proceeds back? Are you then going to be exposed to volatility of exchange rates, right? So it's kind of a new world post-COVID. I don't know whether COVID is the starting point, or it just happened to be when the world started to change. And therefore, then in PETRONAS, we talk a lot about making sure we perform on our existing business, right? So that we can generate enough cash, faster time to cash, more efficient, and then fund the new cleaner sources of energy. And, then in so far as doing that, we can meet our aspiration of having our portfolio a bit more robust and also keeping to our net zero carbon emissions pledge by 2050. Very long answer.
Wow, that is fantastic. I think you
the 75 billion that you talk about.
That's fantastic. No, by the way, everyone listening in, there's a Q&A button you can press if you have any questions for Liza, and we'll get to that later.
Okay. Don't ask hard questions.
Yeah, there'll be times. But I'm just talking about oil prices. So I got some research done. So on 22nd of April 2020, Brent hit $15.98. I mean, that was like an unheard of low, right? It was that lower beyond anybody's ever, base worst case projections. Yeah. And then yesterday it closed at today it closed at $123, and the highest it's reached was $139 since then. I mean, yeah, that's tremendous volatility, right? I don't know how any organization can survive that kind of volatility in your earnings. And you're right, there's nothing you can do about oil prices. I mean, oil prices are a given, right? Giant as you are, you're a price taker when it's oil and gas. So you're sitting as a CFO, and you came into office what, July 2020, just after oil prices have hit an all-time low. What's the first thing you do? How do you sit around and say, look, I'm in charge of all the money of Petronas, and oil prices have sunk to all-time low? What do you start doing?
Dato', that year, when I came onto the job, and that was, like you said, just when we completed quarter 2, because Petronas goes by calendar year, right? And I was looking at the projection, and I took over from Dato' Teguh Taufik. And I said, and just before that, I was in the procurement. I was on the procurement side, for about almost a year. And so I called him and said, is there an error in the projection? It's showing a loss. We've never had a loss before, It's a huge loss. Well, we had a loss during the first year of incorporation, but that's because it's just cost and not enough revenue to match. So put that aside, Petronas has never registered a loss before. And last year, or rather in year 2020, we registered a 21 billion ringgit loss. Wow. And so that was something which is very different. But then when you strip out the number, the loss, the component of the loss, or rather, you see that a lot of it was because we made provisions, and we made provisions because of how we read the future oil prices to be, right? And therefore, if you take that out, fundamentally, the business is still good. If we remove what we call impairment. So we had lots of numbers with impairment, without impairment. The team had to run all those numbers many times. Without the impairment number, even the individual businesses were doing well. And they say, well, I mean, steady vis-a-vis, we had just come out of COVID, notwithstanding, the borders were still closed. Some of our subsidiaries at Dagangan, because they were supplying oil to the planes. So then notably there was some big shifts in terms of their numbers. But overall, as an organization, we were still quite okay, right? And so with that in mind, that was when the thinking is okay. We got to really focus on what we can do. And our advantage is we have a value chain. And if we cannot leverage on the value chain that we already have, then that's a real shame. But to be able to do that in an organization of 48,000 people globally, to move a lever takes a while. And I think that's where we try to work on, digitalization, thinking about one Petronas, not looking at the different businesses or the different units that you're in. So then you kind of think, okay, it's not about the business's P&L, but what's better for the organization as a whole. So that kind of culture shift thinking, messaging was very important at that point in time. And I thought we kind of got through it because of that solidarity of thinking of Petronas as one, as opposed to, I'm the upstream business, I make a lot of profit, you're a downstream business, you have to wait for molecules to come. And that kind of shift was very necessary.
Gosh, I don't know how you do that, but
it wasn't me. It was
the whole organization. Yeah. I know it was a great thing, and to do it during COVID as well. But I don't know. It's right. In 2020, despite oil prices going down to at one point $15 a barrel, at the operational level, the businesses still make money. Is it pre-provisioning?
Operationally, yes, Dato'.
Okay.
Because at that point in time, right, we were unable to predict. No one could predict what the future oil prices would be. Okay, because there was no way of knowing how demand would come about. COVID was still there, new variant came in. And so we were very prudent insofar as how we predicted the going forward oil prices. But when I say prudent, still within the range of, publications.
Right.
But what we did was we always stuck to fundamentals, oil price fundamentals. And even today, in fact, yesterday, we just had a C-suite discussion on what should we use the oil price to be going forward. Oh. And the philosophy is, should we start to introduce the volatility of the oil price, like you said? And yesterday, Goldman Sachs came up with an article says it can go up to 140. Last time they said it could go up to 200. But then as management, we agreed that from a philosophy and principle standpoint, we should stick to what is fundamental oil price, because with that fundamental oil price, which we view to be $50 to $60 per barrel in the long run, that's the basis of how we sanction our projects. And therefore, the projects should be robust, regardless of the oil price volatility. And if the oil prices go up, like Goldman Sachs says, all the way to 140, we just need to be ready to be agile enough to be able to, capture the upside while the upside is still there. So I guess the short answer is planning based on fundamentals is important. And we always get into a tussle with our board, is it too low? Is it too high? But those fundamental oil prices are based on 200 plus data collection points, together with, conversations with other publications, right? So, and our auditors and the banks. So we are very comfortable to work and plan based on oil price fundamentals.
That's hardening. I mean, and I agree. I mean, and it's a textbook, right? You're looking at a project, you do a DCF, you project your future income, you project all of this. But nobody has projects the size of PETRONAS, Liza. I mean, Pengerang is in the billions and billions. Every time you do anything, it's a $1 billion project, and it has to last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, 40 years in the future, right? I just don't understand how you go about making these kind of decisions. I mean, I know you make these decisions, and you've told us, you've told me, and you've told here, these are the factors you look at. But I just, as a personal kind of like, how do I do it? I mean, so much money is at stake, and you have to look so far in the future. Is it you alone? Is that a committee of you?
Oh, no. I think one is, first of all, the philosophy that we have. We means PETRONAS, which is we're very prudent with our financials. And the other thing that we do have sets of processes, because the organization is too big to let it go on its own. The processes. And number three, we also have processes which ensures there is visibility at the enterprise level. So you would have different businesses running, but that visibility of sanctioning, let's say, projects above a certain threshold needs to come all the way up to the PETRONAS leadership team, the central leadership team, so that we are aware that's how capital is being allocated. So that would be, from the visibility standpoint. And then whether projects make it through the funnel or not is a process on its own. It's got lots of stage gates. It's got to pass many different hurdles. And once you pass that hurdle is when we can then table it, to the right approving authority. And then goes to another challenge session. So on one hand, there's a lot of governance, but the trade-off for governance is agility. And I think in PETRONAS, what we are trying to improve is the agility side, because we're not short of processes, Dato', and how to do things. This is the way, this is who should get visibility. But in doing so, it does, the trade-off is slows things down. And that's kind of where you need to, so it's about balancing, I think, the sweet spot of governance and not get left behind just because we're having to contend with so many processes.
But the numbers are just so big, Lisa. They really are. They're just phenomenal. I'm just looking. I just pick one number, right? Your capex for 2018 was 46 billion ringgit, and in 2021 you must have done some massive cost slashing because it went down to 30 billion. But even after cutting costs by that much, I mean 30 billion. This is your smallest capex in the last 5 years or something. It's still 30 billion.
Actually, that's a combination of two things. You're right. There was some rationalization because of the oil prices, so it was an affordability, decision. But because of COVID, a lot of projects also got deferred and delayed. So there's a lot of catch up that's happening this year, which you may not really see it in the first quarter. First quarter of this year, I think capex is about 7 billion. Compared to first quarter last year is about 6 billion. You don't see it that much. But the total capex last year, rather 2021, you're mentioning is about 30 billion, kan? This year, we expect to almost double that amount, close to 60 billion, because of catch-up and because of, the return of activities, vibrancy, and this is the time when we said we also have got to make inroads and some material steps into the non-hydrocarbon side of things. The specialty chemicals. We just had an acquisition recently, per stop, that is part of our specialty chemicals revenue stream, which will form that material amount. We're saying ballpark figure 30% is material, so 30% of our revenue at some point should be coming from something which is not hydrocarbon, based or hydrocarbon related. So yes, big numbers. Acquisition is big numbers. There's a European acquisition.
I don't know. I'm saying 30% is material. 30% of 70 billion a quarter. I mean, I can't. I mean, it's over 20 billion ringgit a quarter before it becomes zero. Okay, so but going back to capex, right? So you're saying you're gonna have about 60 billion worth of capex this year. So the projects, and that's what just for the payments for this year, right? The projects actually last many years, right? So the same project, maybe 10 billion this year. So
well, the capex is a combination, ongoing projects and new projects. So that whole thing works out to be almost 60 billion ringgit.
And
our business as usual, Dato, takes quite a lot, because in the oil and gas industry, if you don't keep investing, let's say, something simple like you drill a well, right? And that well is supposed to last you for, let's say, 10 years. And the well has got a production rate, and you keep having to invest just to keep to the same production rate. Because if you don't invest, and the investment comes in so far as trying to make the wells, better, right? There's no water coming in and stuff like that. Okay, I'm not an engineer, but basically, you still need to spend capex to keep production at current levels, or else the rate of reserve will decline. It's not that the volumes disappear, but the volumes do not become economical, and the volumes cannot be extracted. And so just business as usual capex without adding the decarbonization impact is quite a lot. It's easily, 20 billion easily. Oh no, sorry, 40 billion, quite easily. Yeah, because we're talking about global.
It's just for the existing oil wells,
Half international. Roughly, that's the split.
So just to keep the existing oil wells, not new oil wells.
Just to keep the lights running, what we say, Wow. Yeah. It's quite sizable. So the 30 billion capex that you see in 2021 full year, that was, if you take that as the benchmark, that is predominantly just keeping the lights on and some cost optimization and some delay, not a lot of growth.
I see.
So this year we have to factor in the growth, or else we're never going to be able to contend with energy transition, and we will miss our target of trying to be in a net zero carbon emissions level by 2050.
Gosh. That is, I mean, that's sort of, these kind of numbers are beyond most people's ken. I mean, the largest company in Malaysia in terms of market cap is a bank which is a friend of ours, and they're just over 100 billion ringgit, right? So, your revenue in the first quarter was almost equal to but for the second quarter, your revenues are more than the largest, the market cap, the largest company in Malaysia. So you are, in a different scale from all the other Malaysian companies. We were talking earlier, you're our global company. You are a global champion. So lots of responsibilities on you as Petronas, and it's Petroleum Nasional. Petroleum Nasional, right? So tell us a little bit about this Nasional part. We were talking earlier. You are, it's not just making money, which you have to do, which I'm glad you do, because we all depend on Petronas to make money. But it's not just making money, right? The other objectives you have.
So thanks, Dato. So Petronas is a national oil company with a global footprint. So when we talk about our dual role, it's a commercial entity, but also a national oil company. And what does that mean? In the context of a commercial entity, the responsibility would be to deliver top performance, create maximum value for your shareholder. But when you talk about also being a national oil company, it means that we need to have outcomes that help to develop the nation, in addition to being a commercial entity. So I give you an example. It's to provide access to affordable energy, right? If we were just a standalone oil and gas company, affordability may not be very high. It's what is profitability. But because we're also a national oil company, we have to also make sure that the energy is affordable, one, and that the energy is secure. There is there's energy security for the country, right? So we can't have, we like to joke about this, we can't be lighting Tokyo and KL is having a blackout. We can't do that, not as a national oil company. Yeah. And then over and above that would be the responsibility to build and nurture the oil and gas ecosystem in Malaysia. That is part and parcel of what a national oil company needs to do. Besides the usual, skills development, creating jobs. So sometimes both objectives are aligned, because I think profitability is aligned, right? You can't be helping the nation if you are at a loss. So I think, personally, I think that profitability piece encompasses both objectives. But there's times where we also have to make calls between, nurturing, helping along the way. Some of my colleagues like to say, shepherd them along the way, and the profitability, lowest cost, most efficient. And sometimes we believe that trade-off is necessary today, because the price at the end of the road is sustainability. If we talk about energy transition, for example, right? If I'm just interested in, if Petronas is just interested in making sure that we meet all the net zero carbon ambition, we get by energy transmission, most likely we can do many things in a shorter time frame. But because we are also a national oil company, we have to bring the ecosystem together with us, right? And therefore it takes a little bit more time, more effort, more orchestration, if you like, right? But we believe that at the end of the day, the prize at the end is a greater achievement, because you're not just achieving it for the entity, but you're achieving it for a wider group of companies and people, and the impact is more lasting. So that's the motivation. That's how we kind of look at it, and that's how we look at trade-offs. A lot of the discussions that we have, at many levels in the organization is, are we making the right trade-off? Is this the right balance? And that takes quite a lot of time and careful consideration, because of the dual role that we have.
That's great. So energy security, I think that's an interesting point. I think, and because people talk about food security a lot these days, but energy security is actually probably more than that. So what you're saying is that no matter what happens, at least Petronas will make sure that Malaysia won't run out of energy. Is that?
We have to, I can give an example, kan, Datuk. You know, today, the spot prices of LNG is really high. Okay?
Yeah.
And we're also looking at the power mix for the nation. And for obvious reasons, I think the nation has decided to go down on coal and up on gas. And when you talk about energy security, there's only so much molecules that we can provide from, our fields in Malaysia. And sometimes the LNGs that we have outside Malaysia have already been committed. Even the ones in Malaysia have been committed to our customers. Can. And therefore, sometimes there is a need to then contend with having to import LNG. Gosh. And obviously, because of the gas price in Malaysia is not at market parity as yet, then we would have to contend with importing LNG at spot prices, and sell it to the market at the market price, the Malaysian market price. And that's part of the effort of ensuring energy security, not necessarily a profitable transaction, but that's where I was saying that the balance also comes in. And then we say, well, we can't be doing this for a long time. It's not sustainable. So what else can we do? So again, what can we do would be, what is within our control would be our assets. Are our assets efficient? Because our assets, if it's not efficient, then that's also consuming unnecessary gas, right? Then we don't have to import so much. So on our end, we look at the quality of our assets. How can we be more efficient, digitalization? And we also see, if there's a role that we can play in the gas policy as well of Malaysia. So that whole long story is, just pointing to one responsibility, which is ensuring energy security.
Gosh. I mean, gas is a good example. So, world prices, all going up. But cooking gas in Malaysia, we haven't increased the prices yet, have we? For cooking gas?
Well, the
cylinders, the bulk cylinders.
I think that's probably got a subsidy element from the government.
Right. I see. So you don't bear the
where we subsidize is the natural gas price, the one that goes to power up our electricity.
Okay.
Yeah. So that bit of gas subsidy is borne by PETRONAS.
Right. So you could say that subsidy becomes profit for the Tenaga shareholders. Is that?
I think it's a pass through, so to ensure that the consumers
enjoy the
yeah.
I was going to go there and push you on that one, but what about industrial gas? Gas for factories and stuff. Is that something?
I think that is nearing market parity already. If not, it's already market parity. So the ones which is for consumer is still not really at market parity.
And please don't, because our inflation is bad enough as it is. Please make sure that the price of cooking oil and petroleum subsidies are not borne by you. They're borne by the government.
That's by the government. Correct.
Right. So basically, how does it work? You sell it at market prices.
We sell it at the pump prices, and then the differential comes back as a subsidy. I mean, not just to PETRONAS, to all oil and gas companies who operate the retail side. Yeah, it's the same.
Right. Okay. So that's the kind of all national energy security. But sometimes I wonder whether we haven't, as a country, I don't think we've really properly articulated our energy policy, have we? In terms of, it's only now we're talking about renewable and things, but we don't really. Do we have a kind of master plan to say that over time we should have X% from gas, Y% from coal, and Z% from solar? Is there such a policy on that?
I'm not too sure on the policy side, but I know that there is always the mix, the target mix. And today, since Malaysia is also part of the Paris Climate Agreement, and Malaysia has also pledged to be in a net zero carbon emissions position at least by 2050. Yeah. There is also some pledges around the mix of energy, like what you said. But I have enough color to share. Another colleague of mine is in the strategic side. He's more astute in the government's policy, so far as energy policy is concerned.
You've been very diplomatic there. I don't think there is such a piece of paper, actually. We've announced a target, but I don't think we have, it's clear how we're going to achieve that target yet. But for PETRONAS, we're very clear, right? When you say 2050 net zero,
actually, honestly, I don't think anyone is very clear in globally how we're going to achieve the 2050 target. Perhaps the next 10 years is what we are kind of, have better certainty, better plans. And I think it's not just the oil and gas company, it's also the financial institutions, because I think they are also part of the, having to pledge, ensuring that their portfolio got components of net zero and green, but getting to the 2050 target is something that we're kind of working through. At the back of everyone's mind is hopefully technology will help. What is that technology? Who's funding the technology for now to make sure that it is commercial and therefore sustainable, and you can go down that route? That's still not very clear in my view.
No, you're right. And there's a sense of kicking the can down the road. 2050 is 30 years away for some people. It's post 30 years away. I want to get back to the whole renewable energy thing after this, but just going back to what you're saying, as the Nasional part of what you have to do. The other one is develop a local oil and gas services industry. And that CAPEX you spend, is that what goes to the oil and gas services industry in Malaysia? Is that the bulk of it?
Half of it is about 50-50. Half of it is for domestic CAPEX, and another half is our business outside Malaysia. And for the domestic industry, not to forget that even our OPEX goes to them as well. So CAPEX would be new projects, for example, right? But the run and maintain, those are also part and parcel of how the industry and PETRONAS comes together. So sometimes we talk a lot about CAPEX, but we forget the OPEX. The OPEX, during the year where we had 30 billion CAPEX, which is quite low, the OPEX was not much affected. Yeah, because we still had to run our plants, the rigs. Operationally, it's still ongoing. It's just the new projects. Because why it got deferred and delayed is because it couldn't meet sanction threshold. Because when you talk about future oil prices being low, right, and you do your DCF, and you say, but this can't fly because you're not meeting the hurdle rate. So because of that, projects got delayed or on the shelf until such time that better numbers can come about. But the run and maintain, the operation still happens, and that's still quite a sizable amount of our ecosystem which is involved in that.
Okay, so I mean, if OPEX is about 60 billion. That's 30 billion of CAPEX going to Malaysia, and out of your OPEX, what's your OPEX like? 40 billion a year, 50 billion a year, something like that. Yeah. So that's not that. That's a several, and that Malaysian chunk turns into revenue for all the oil and gas, and what's an expense to you is revenue for the oil and gas services sector in Malaysia, isn't it? It's not. Yes, and as head of procurement, that's what you're looking after. You must have been really, really popular. I mean, I don't know how you did it as head of procurement, dealing with all these people, all these vendors asking you.
I think our VP procurement is listening in, and she's probably chuckling that she doesn't have to converse and put on her camera. But I mean, looking after the industry, shaping the industry, I think the big challenge is expectation, Dato'. When I talk sustainability, right? Our view, or the PETRONAS' view of what's sustainable is you and I work together for a sustainable period for a long time, for foreseeable long period of time. I've also got conversations with the industry when they say sustainability is keeping me profitable, which, well, in a way is true, but profitability is also vis-a-vis benchmarking the cost that's in the region. Right. So it cannot just be cost plus. It's got to be the cost is the right cost. And that to me is tricky. The procurement piece in PETRONAS, it's like any other procurement, but because of the scale and the size, suddenly it becomes a whole new animal, completely different.
The scale of PETRONAS. I mean, I'm just looking at the budgets of the country, right? You know, the Selangor budget is 2.3 billion ringgit for a year. I mean, Selangor is, you know, our richest, most populous state, and it's 2.3 billion a year. And you're talking about, you know, capex and opex spends and like the tens of billions, if not the, you know, or the you know, half you know, 50, 60 billion. That's a huge amount of spending. And as you explained, spending that has to be done. It's not that we don't have to do the spending. You have to do it.
I think what the procurement team did a while ago, a couple of years ago, was also trying to give the same visibility to the oil and gas industry players insofar as what is Petronas's focus area over the next 3 years. So every year, Petronas will publish what we call the Petronas Activity Outlook, which kind of tells you this is the kind of projects that we're looking to do, and the number of rigs that we intend to have. And all that is premised on the budget that we just approved, because we do a budget approval every year, right?
Right.
And this year, or rather last year, when we produced the activity report for this year and the subsequent 2 years, a lot of emphasis was given around what we just talked about, energy transition, and ensuring that the ecosystem is also moving towards, you know, lowering emissions, you know, meeting the country's aspiration of net zero emissions. And, you know, for example, one of the things that we want to do, Dato', is to make Malaysia the CCS, carbon capture and storage solutions hub for the region.
Oh, okay.
And that's a totally new business, a totally new revenue line. And if the ecosystem is supportive, then that also opens up to a whole new different revenue stream business activities that the oil and gas ecosystem can come into, you know. But yeah, we got to orchestrate that, like I said, time, effort, and careful orchestration. If we get all that right together with the oil and gas players, then I think it's really good for Malaysia, because it becomes a, you know, a whole new revenue stream business altogether.
No, it's amazing. I mean, yeah, and this business which didn't exist before, right? You're creating a new business, and which exists. Sorry, I don't know if you can see, but sorry, this is a
wow, you're already ahead.
Yeah. You should everybody here. You should please download this. It's a fantastic document. It's totally maximum transparency, you know, and really tells everybody. Although I noticed though that you have arrows going up, arrows going sideways, and arrows going down. And for a lot of the oil and gas services industry, it's all sideways, right? It's not much. It's not much up. So well, it is what it is, I guess. But you're very. I want to congratulate you on how transparent this is. And you know, if I was a vendor or someone trying to supply Petronas, it really tells me, you know, what you're thinking and where I should.
Yeah, because it's difficult for them to plan, right? I mean, we understand vendors also need planning time. They would need to go through a financing, you know, program, and the finances want to know, you know, what kind of focus that they have, and if they're able to kind of rely and show the kind of activity report that we have, I think that gives more credibility to the vendors, and that's the sort of help that we would like to be able to do with the vendors. That is part of our responsibility as a national oil company. Right.
Okay. No, it's great. It's great. So, okay, my last question on this vendors aspect. Would it be fair to say that because of the national, you know, the national role, that you would be willing to pay slightly more for a local vendor than you would pay an international vendor? Is that would be fair? I mean, it's like, I'm not saying a lot more, but you would be.
I think Dato', you're probably very familiar with our VDP, Vendor Development Program, right? And yeah, like any nurturing activity, some, you know, handicap, if you like, has to be given. So it can come in the form of a secured contract until you kind of get into the groove, or some kind of, you know, like you said, paying higher, because we can imagine if you're first starting out, you don't have scale, they have experience, right? So then that becomes part and parcel of the package of developing a vendor. The tricky bit is always, when is graduation time?
Yes.
Like in school, it's very definitive. 3 years you're out, 5 years you're out. But graduation time is denoted by, you know, vendor being able to kind of operate on your own, right? But then operate on your own, is it operate on your own silo or vis-a-vis the other competitors who have got, a lot of more advantage, and therefore you really got to swim your way around to make sure that you are also within the top quartile of people who other service companies like the other oil and gas companies also will want to consider you because of your merits. So that bit I always find, is where a lot of time is spent. And again, it's that balancing act, kan? The commercial entity, and also the need to make sure that we are able to deliver something which is material to the nation.
Wow. That's great. That is great. That is great.
It sounds really good, when we talk about it, but executing it is a totally different experience.
No. Which is why, Juan Liza, you have the hot seat. You are the CFO. You have got the biggest CFO job in Malaysia by far. Nobody else's CFO job comes close to yours, and that's a huge responsibility. So now let's talk. We've got loads of questions, but I just want to let's talk quickly about sustainability. So it's real. I mean, in your activity report, you talk about hydrogen, you talk about solar, you talk about wind. So what are Petronas's plan? I mean, you're an oil and gas company. Hydrocarbons and carbon is your lifeblood. So what is it Petronas doing in
here's the context. Like I said earlier about balancing between being a commercial entity and also a national oil company. The other balancing within the organization is balancing between what we call core, and the new stuff, right? And here's the thing. If we don't do our core business, right? If suddenly tomorrow we said, let's not produce any molecule ever, right? If we don't do our core business, then immediately we lose the capacity and ability to undertake the new stuff, which is what's going to help us to get through energy transition and to meet to our net zero carbon emissions pledge, right? So there's that. So you've got to do that well. And there is still space for the oil and gas industry players to go into, to continue in the oil and gas space. But we need it to be faster. We need it to be more efficient. We need it to be leaner, meaner. It's a whole new, animal of oil and gas. And that's kind of where we need to be. And that's how we need to be together with our oil and gas partners. And because we need to do that in order to achieve the greater goal, which is to undertake investments in cleaner sources of energy, then we also need to make sure that we are poised to be able to receive those funds and do something about it. Okay? So that would be, today we feel that it's not internally grown. We do have to have acquisitions if we wanted to go into solar, wind, hydrogen, so it will be that space. And so how much of the oil and gas ecosystem can come along with us on that journey outside Malaysia, perhaps at this juncture is limited, but that's why I also brought up the CCUS focus, which is if Malaysia is the carbon capture and storage hub for the region, then that in itself opens quite a big, activity stream for the oil and gas players to pivot, if you like. But I guess at the end of the day, the common denominating factor is we need to be able, we as in even Petronas, we need to be able to, cut out a lot of slack so that we are more agile, organizational drag, stuff like that. That was probably okay if you had, just to contend with the oil and gas business because we've been in it for a long time. But if you're moving towards something new, then all those organizational drag, for us sometimes, like I was telling you, it's a process drag too. We've got to be able to overcome that. And, I think it's how we're going to shape the industry so that we can also be dependent on them and they can also be dependent on us. Yeah, like I said, a lot of these things are easy to talk about on paper. The execution part, is really where the proof of the pudding is.
Yeah, but it starts with the big ambitions, and I'm so glad to hear that Petronas has big ambitions in in the whole green energy and net zero stuff, because it's just important. I mean, that's the way the world is heading. Is this going to be is this going to be part of the existing business PETRONAS? Is there a new unit to do new energy things?
So I'm sure you know already, but we know that to go into this new space, you cannot be within the existing business, because you'll just get lost. Get lost in translation. It's small, everything else is big, there's not enough focus. So PETRONAS has created a new business stream, if you like, called the Clean Energy Solutions. At some point, it will be strategically managed by a separate board, not the board of PETRONAS. And to my understanding, that constituting the board is an ongoing process. We just have one common board member from the PETRONAS board into the board of this Clean Energy Solutions. And the thinking is Datuk Tengku Taufik will preside over the management team in the current business, and he will also be on the board of the Clean Energy Solutions business. And to my understanding, all the other board members need to be coming from people who are more experienced or experts. It's quite a daunting task trying to get people to come and sit on the board of this new company. But it's very necessary, Datuk, because I don't think a lot of us have got to put our hand on our heart and say, we are probably not the best people to steer and shape and strategize this new business that we need to have and to be equally successful. So it's got to be people who are more entrenched in it, I suppose, rather than the current group of people. So we said, for continuity, we just have Datuk Tengku there, one of PETRONAS board members, and everyone else around that board will be, new.
Josh. So at the moment it's gas and new energy, right? So it will be.
It's split now from gas and new energy. So gas is just gas. Yes. New energy moves into this new business unit.
Wow.
Yeah. And all the other new portfolios that's supposed to shape this business unit will go there.
Right. Because you're talking about two things. You're talking about new energy and specialty chemicals. So specialty chemicals is still part of the existing chemicals business.
Yes, that's still part of the existing chemicals.
But this is the new thing.
This is the uncompromisingly green. That's the ambition.
So only electric cars, and hydrogen. I hope you do more with hydrogen. I like hydrogen more than batteries. I don't think batteries are the way.
It's all a function of technology, Dato, and to be able to do it at a cost which is commercially, makes commercial sense, then it can take off. I think there's a target of how much per unit, metric ton that we need to be striving towards for it to take off commercially in a big way. So until then, it becomes not like research, but investment, but not really commercial just yet. So there's a lot of partnership considerations. Who should we partner with? Can we leverage on our carrier business to be part and parcel that, to help support the hydrogen business? Yeah.
So it's all new, but it's all new. It's all great. I mean, it's just such problem, such good things ahead. Sorry, we have lots of questions. I mean, really bad because we've got 16 questions. We only got 7 minutes to answer them, but never mind. Well, I'll spread very quickly. This is from Banama Niam. When Puan Liza, you said 10% of the capital allocation will go for clean energy. What was the previous allocation rate?
Probably something like 2% or 3%, or put it this way, I think it was never, planned what rate it should be.
Right.
And because there was no allocation from the top, it didn't really take off. So then the thinking is, I think we need to be, deliberate in terms of our capital allocation decision and set it aside and really watch that space. Why isn't it being utilized? Because if we just kind of leave it and let it go with the flow, then we are 1 year behind all over again. Yeah.
And now with dollar going up as a ringgit, does that mean in ringgit terms we'll have a double bonanza for this year?
Well, technically, because our accounts are stated in ringgit, so again, that's translational, Dr. Sharon. I don't think our board will be too happy if we report that our results are good because of price and Forex, and they'll go, How are you actually doing?
I mean, it's good. I mean, it's more money for the country. So I mean, don't. I mean, because if things don't go well, you're going to get blamed. So if things do go well, you should take all the credit. That's what I think. Do you expect FY22 to continue registering a triple-digit growth? Given what happened in Q1, do you think it's going to happen for the rest of the year?
I imagine the question is centering around revenue lah kot. If you say triple digit, kan our triple digit has always been our revenue, not so much our profit. And I believe the triple digit revenue is to be expected.
Question from my board member, Datuk Yasmin. You mentioned digitalization is a key lever towards driving efficiency and towards building a global cultural transformation. Where are you in this journey, and what are your guiding principles in making this investment?
I think we went on a digitalization focus quite some time ago under Tan Sri Wanzul, when he put pace and digitalization side by side as the focus area of what Petronas needs to be looking at. Now, what happened subsequent to that was COVID, and suddenly everyone had to work from home. Procurement used to be done by way of literally pushing trolleys, like you see at the airport, stacks and stacks of papers that goes into a room with a guard standing outside, literally standing outside, and make sure you don't bring your handphone or what have you. And suddenly no one can come to the office, right? But our chief digital officer at that point in time, I cannot imagine being in her shoe at that point in time, because you just had to turn everything around very quickly. And so tender evaluation then was able to take place from your home, and it needed to be done because activities couldn't stop, right? COVID came, but we were essential industry somehow, so we couldn't stop. And so that tested to me the pace of deploying and utilizing digitalization. And because then the whole world then got into that space very quickly too, for obvious reasons, the focus today is, making sure that the data that we have is not going to be the stumbling block towards our digitalization efforts. Because we talk about tools, we talk about service providers, we talk about support, we talk about what is it we need, we talk about streamlining, and then we come to a boulder and we say, oh, that boulder is the data. And if the data is not well managed, if the data is not streamed to the kind of data lakes that we require, then all that digital investments that we have will not be performing to its potential. So today, there is a lot of focus, equal focus, on making sure that the data in organization, we have so much data, Dato'. It's not just financials, it's all the operational data, safety data, all that kind of has to come together in a way that works. And so that the organization just sees the user interface portion of it. But the unsexy stuff, which is the data that happens behind the scene, streamlining, is a whole big effort that is being coordinated by our Chief Digital Officer.
Gosh, fantastic.
Not sure if I answered the question, but that's kind of
fantastic.
Right
two questions, and I'll do it very quickly. One is from Bloomberg and one from Berita Harian. From Bloomberg, Yan Tultra, are there any plans to monetize your overseas assets, such as Canada and South Africa, and invest that into green? And then from Berita Harian, can you explain more on the 60 billion capex? What are the main projects, and what are your oil price expectations for this year?
Okay.
So
I'll take the Canada investment, the monetization question first. I think, Petronas, like I said, we have long processes, and one of the processes includes ensuring that our portfolio is robust. And we are always looking to high grade our portfolio, right? That's ongoing. So monetization comes in the form of you either monetize the molecules, means we'll be putting in more investments there, or monetization also means, if we had some divestments, we divested our Azerbaijan recently, and that's all part of portfolio management. So that's quite normal. Talking about green, now some of the countries that we are in, they already have their own carbon prices. So Canada and South Africa are two of such investments which we have already been including the carbon pricing in our investments. We intend to do that too. So what we do is we're coming up with a secondary price of what carbon should be, and try to incorporate that into our decision making, whether we sanction projects or not. We've also had a few carbon neutral LNG cargoes, which basically means there's LNG, and then we quantify the emissions coming off the production of the LNG, and then we purchase credits, to offset. So it's called carbon neutral LNG, which we have delivered to some of our customers. So
where do you buy the offsets from? You buy them on where do you get the offsets from?
We buy it from voluntary markets, voluntary carbon markets.
Wow. Okay.
We'll
talk to you separately about that, because I think carbon trading is the next
bring
thing.
in my colleague from the energy side to go more into which voluntary market. But yeah, it's something that we purchase, so that the cargo that we deliver, we deliberately say this is an LNG neutral, carbon neutral LNG cargo. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, fantastic. And the other one was the
capex.
Question
was about capex, right?
Any big projects for the 16 billion capex? What are the big projects making up the 60 billion?
Well, the amount of capex we allocate is a function of affordability and what we need to do. Okay. So right now, like I said, quite a sizable amount of it, about 40 billion, 40 plus actually, when you take business as usual plus decarbonization efforts. So that is quite sizable already out of the 60. And like I said, it's roughly half international and Malaysia. And the balance of that is, this growth capex we talked about. The recent acquisition of Perstorp, which we did for specialty chemicals, that's part of the capital allocation which we set aside. And thank God it went through, because if the deal had not gone through, then we have been unutilized capital allocation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. Pengerang, could you update us and Saudi Aramco?
Sure. I'm happy to share that Pengerang is now back, in operations. I think, alhamdulillah, in May. A lot of the leadership team went there just to give support, because we had a bit of setback, and then we had to make sure that the plant is ready for startup, and safety is always paramount. Yes. And we work very closely with our partners from Aramco. They also send their people on the ground to Pengerang, two. One is the technical side, and also to give moral support to make sure that everyone is focused towards startup. So we achieved that. And that's a huge relief for everyone, especially those on the ground in Pengerang. So, I mean, Aramco is still our partner in the venture, 50-50, in the two biggest complexes of Pengerang, which is the refining and the petrochemicals businesses. Of course, we have other little businesses, which is the utilities, the water and all that, but really the bigger part of Pengerang is really the JV that we have with Aramco. So that's progressing as we planned, and we are very thankful for that.
Fantastic. Well, Liza, you have been a fantastic guest, and I think everybody has learned so much about Petronas. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. So
thank you, Dato', and thank you, MIDF team. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All the best. So I think you just press the red button.
I'll just press the red button to leave. Okay.